Welcome to Hard Talk on the BBC World Service with me, Stephen Sacker. My guest today is an activist on many fronts. Carola Rackete is a 31-year-old German woman who's been a polar scientific researcher, a Greenpeace environmental activist, and earlier this year, the captain of a rescue ship, the Sea-Watch 3, monitoring the waters of the Mediterranean on the lookout for migrants in danger. Back in June, she rescued more than 50 migrants attempting to make the crossing from Libya to southern Italy. After a prolonged standoff with the Italian authorities, who have banned such rescue ships from their territorial waters, she docked her vessel in Sicily and put her migrant passengers ashore. She was promptly arrested and accused of various crimes, including the endangerment of a police boat which she hit during the incident. She's since been released, though some of the charges against her remain outstanding. What is the best way of reducing the people smuggling and the suffering of desperate people seeking a better life despite grave danger? Well, Carola Rackete joins me now. Welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
You have emerged from an extraordinary experience earlier this summer, which saw you captaining a rescue vessel in the Mediterranean, picking up almost 50 or so migrants, and then in detention for a while. How much of a toll has that experience taken on you?
Well, I've first been volunteering with this organization in 2016.
It's called Sea-Watch.
Yeah, Sea-Watch. And when you talk to the refugees who come from Libya, a country at civil war, and you understand what they have been through, then risking a bit of your white privilege suddenly is very, very little.
You were the captain of Sea-Watch 3, one of the vessels that has been in the Mediterranean monitoring, looking out for people in desperate straits on the sea, often in dinghies which appear to be about to sink. When you signed up, were you aware of just how potentially controversial and difficult your mission was going to be?
Well, when I first started volunteering in 2016, it was a completely different situation. There was a lot of mutual support with the authorities, the European military, and particularly the Italian Coast Guard. But then in 2017, the first rescue vessel, the Juvente, was arrested, and from that moment onwards, particularly the captains but all the crew understand that there is a risk of criminalization. So the scene over these years has changed completely.
So when you picked up I believe it was 40 or 50 migrants who were in deep trouble in the sea about 40 or 50 miles off the coast of Libya, was it immediately in your mind that you had a problem here and you had to think very carefully about what to do?
Well, we were very aware of the difficult political situation. As you mentioned, this is a situation which has been growing over years. So there's a lack of solidarity within the European Union to distribute the people who arrive over the sea route. And due to the Dublin III system, that burden is carried by the states of the southern border of Italy. And that is a situation which is caused by the states in Central Europe and Northern Europe because they don't want to change the rules.
No, and we'll get to the politics of this in some detail later, but just paint a picture for me of what condition the people were in that you came across on Sea-Watch 3 in early June 2019. Who were they? What condition?
Yeah, there were 53 people on a rubber dinghy, which we know from experience is very unstable. I've seen them sink within minutes once they deflate. None of the people had life jackets. There were 2 infants, pregnant women, no navigation equipment, no food and no water. So by the maritime law, that is a distress case because you can be sure these people cannot arrive to any port.
And were they begging you to take them on board your vessel, the Sea-Watch?
Yeah, they're definitely aware how dangerous the situation is. People are terrified on board these boats. They know they can break, they can capsize. Sometimes people fall overboard. In 2017, for example, I rescued a 2-year-old boy whose father had fallen overboard just 3 or 4 hours ago.
You mentioned the infants and the pregnant women. Was it predominantly young men, or was it a real mix of people?
I think in this case, we had about 10 women and children, and the rest were men.
Right. You, of course, had a choice to make at the very beginning. You were much closer to the Libyan coastline than you were to anywhere in southern Europe. I believe roughly 40 miles off the coast of Libya. The Libyan Coast Guard is now committed, thanks to EU support, EU finance, equipment and training. They are committed to clamping down on the people smuggling, and they want all of those who attempt to cross to be returned to Libya. Why didn't you return them to Libya?
Well, it would be breaking the Geneva Convention about the non-refoulement, because we know that these people are suffering human rights abuses in Libya, also in the detention centers. This could be kidnapping, torture, forced labor.
But the EU are partners of the Libyan Coast Guard.
Yeah.
Libya is working with the EU. Are you saying that you not for 1 second would trust the Libyans to look after the basic human needs of these people?
Not for 1 second. We have a lot of experience with them, and these human rights abuses are well documented by the EU as well. They know exactly what they are doing and who they are financing. The Libyan Coast Guard has evolved from various warlords which have just taken control of the boats, which existed 2015, 2016. They're now financed, but they're also complicit, and that is known, in many human rights abuses. And there have been cases where the Coast Guard disturbed our rescues, leading to the death of people.
Now, as we've established, even in the course of this conversation, you were very well aware of the legal and political context in Italy. But nonetheless, you decided to take the Sea Watch toward southern Italy, toward Sicily, and you ultimately spent days and days floating around, I guess, beginning a dialogue with the Italians, or at least asking them for permission to land your passengers. Mm-hmm. Now, what did the Italians say to you?
Well, the Italians said they were not responsible for this rescue case because it had been carried out in the Libyan Zar zone.
Which is true.
Which is true, which means that the Libyans have to coordinate it. However, Libya doesn't have any port of safety, and that also has been stated clearly by the EU Commission. So we would be breaking the law, bringing people to Libya. So when we requested Italy after 2 days, there was a German city, medium-sized city, which offered to take all the people and even send a bus to Sicily to pick them up. But unfortunately, both the Interior Ministry of Germany and of Italy didn't want to agree on this solution.
But the law is the law, passed by a democratic government in Italy, and you were well aware of the law. That is, it's illegal for a rescue vessel such as yours to enter Italian territorial waters, and still more illegal to attempt to land at an Italian port. And yet, in the end, you did that. Why?
Well, 2 laws are in conflict with each other here. It's the maritime law, which says that you have a duty to rescue, and your rescue is completed when you bring people to a port of safety. And then you have the national law in this case, which prohibits the entry. So we were waiting in order not to break the law, and we were hoping for a political solution, such as offered by this German city, so that the people could be disembarked outside the territorial waters, and that would have prevented the whole scenario which followed.
And while you were waiting, I just wonder what condition the passengers, the migrants on your ship were in, and how much pressure did you feel to do something to get them off the ship?
Well, the situation was worsening every day, particularly the psychological situation. Nearly all these people have been in different types of prison camps or have suffered from human rights abuses, as already mentioned. Some suffered from post-traumatic stress disorders. Some suffered from torture wounds which hadn't been treated properly because they didn't have access to health care. And the pure worry of not knowing where your future leads you and what will happen led to the fact that people were severely disturbed, and the doctors in the end my medical team in the end said that we couldn't guarantee the safety of the people anymore. You
must have, obviously, you and your team, spoken to them at some length over the course of what was in effect roughly 2 weeks of this journey. So you heard some of their stories. Where were they from? And did you form an opinion as to whether these were largely economic migrants or people seeking asylum because they were fleeing conflict and persecution?
They came from various sub-Sahara countries, most of them. And I think it's very interesting to think about why these people migrate. And I think it largely has to do as well with the environmental breakdown, which we are, like industrial nations, are causing. So most people like to stay at home, really, if they can. But the socioeconomic conditions are so difficult in many countries that people have no choice other than to go somewhere else.
That's your judgment. That doesn't necessarily match what in international law constitutes refugee status. But we'll get back to that in a minute. I just want to finish the amazing story of June, because after not getting permission to land in Italy, you, in the end, took the law into your own hands. You piloted your vessel into the Sicilian port against the wishes of the authorities. You slammed into what appears to have been some sort of police boat, squeezing it, according to the Italians, against the harbour in a, they say, very dangerous fashion. It does seem in the end you were pushing the very edge of safety and responsible behaviour in your decision to land your boat.
Well, there's quite a few videos of the scene which everyone is invited to watch. The maneuver was very slow. The people who were at risk really were the refugees who we had on board.
Well, they say, and indeed they charged you with illegally entering their territorial waters and also for endangering the safety of an Italian police vessel. And they charged you, and for a while it looked as though you were going to stay under arrest, house arrest, in Italy for some time. At that point, were you beginning to regret what you'd done?
No, I certainly didn't regret what happened. I regret that there's such a lack of solidarity within the European Union. I mean, it's just 4,000 people who arrived from this route this year to Italy. So I really regret that we do